Kel and the Whispering Woods. Kel padded softly along the narrow trail, moonlight glinting on the damp needles under his paws. He was no ordinary bear. His eyes held a patient curiosity, his gait a quiet deliberation born of years spent wandering forgotten wilderness. Tonight, he carried nothing but a battered canvas pack slung over one shoulder, containing a simple kettle, a flint striker, and a well-worn journal. The forest around him had once sheltered an old logging camp, abandoned since the Great Freeze of 1893, when the last lumberjacks vanished without trace. Hollowed stumps and rusted tools lay half swallowed by ferns, whispering of lives long gone. The timber cabins, their roofs caved and walls bowed by creeping ivy, still bore carved initials and crude glyphs rumored to ward off the night walker, a shape-shifting phantom said to hunt the woods under each new moon. Every creak of broken floorboard, every rustle of dead leaves under his claws set Kel's senses alight. A distant owl called 3 times, then fell silent, as if warning him to turn back. Yet he pushed on, drawn by an inexplicable pull toward a clearing where the camp's ancient stone hearth still stood, half covered in moss. The heart of the forest beat in his chest with each measured step. He paused to breathe in the cold air tinged with pine and decaying spruce, then lit a single match. Flames sprung to life, throwing tall shadows that danced across the crumbling chimneys. Kel settled beside the fire, careful not to disturb the brittle bricks. He dangled the kettle over the flicker, listening to the hiss as water met heat. Around him, the darkness deepened into a living thing. The hush before a storm. He lifted his head when the wind sighed through the trees, carrying a faint human-shaped moan that could have been laughter or warning. He leaned forward, heart quickening, and traced the edge of the clearing to where the ground sloped toward a half-buried relic, a monolithic stone carved with spiraling runes, now softened by centuries of rain. Drawn by a blend of dread and wonder, Kel circled the stone, fingertips brushing its damp surface. The runes, stylized bears, lanky figures in top hats and curling vines, seemed to shift under his gaze as if alive. A sudden snap of twigs shoved him back. He whirled to see nothing but the yawning black between trees. His fur bristled. A hush fell so complete that his own breath seemed too loud. Then came the faint crunch, as if someone was stepping just beyond the light of his campfire. In the dim glow, he spotted a figure emerging, a man in oil-spattered overalls, face unseen beneath a dripping hood. He carried an old miner's lantern, its glass cracked, yet it burned with a steady blue flame. Kel's claws dug into the earth, but he dared not roar. Fear, sharp and electric, held him silent. The stranger stood motionless, then lowered the lantern. Through the fractured glass, Kel saw, or thought he saw, 2 bright embers in hollow sockets. A cold sweat trickled down his spine. Kel dropped his pack. The kettle rattled. Flames flickered. He forced himself to blink. The lantern bearer was gone. No prints marked the soft earth. No scent trailed back to the forest's edge. Only the stone hearth glowed red in the dying firelight, and the carved runes pulsed faintly as though breathing. Kel leapt to his feet, heart hammering in his throat. He raced for the stone relic, fingertips grazing its spiral script. A low rumble thrummed through the ground. The runes flared bright as ghost-white fire. A shape rose from the shadows on the far side of the stone, a great crooked silhouette, half man, half bear, its mouth agape in a silent roar. Kell's pulse hammered, each second stretched to an eternity. He mustered every ounce of courage, baring his teeth in a defiant snarl. The creature, Kell's own distorted reflection in the lantern glass, lunged with impossible speed. Kell lunged back, slamming his shoulder into the monolith. With a shuddering crack, one of the carved panels split open. A blinding light shot forth, swallowing both bear and phantom in a searing burst. When Kell's claws slid back into the forest floor, the night was calm again. The runes lay shattered fragments, dull beneath the moon. No echo of the blue fire remained. Kell panted, muscles trembling as distant thunder rolled through the canopy, though the sky overhead was clear. By dawn, Kell was gone from the clearing. The campfire was nothing but charred bricks. The stone relic had crumbled to dust. Deep in his pack lay his battered journal, its pages smeared with ash. On the first blank leaf in Kell's careful script appeared a single sentence. Some legends sleep beneath the earth, but others only wait for the bold to wake them. As the sun rose over the old logging camp, the woods returned to stillness. Only the faintest whisper lingered through the pines, a hint that somewhere, beyond the veil of night, the night walker still watched. And so a new tale was born, carried by Kell the bear into the lore of whispered campfire stories, where fear never truly dies. Tom and the shadow that waits.
You summoned me.
Every night, long after the last car rolled past their small suburban house, Tom lay awake beneath his quilt, heart hammering against the hush. His room smelled of lavender air freshener and old pine furniture, a reassuring comfort by day. A brittle promise when darkness fell. A single nightlight, shaped like a crescent moon, cast a pale glow across the warped floorboards, but the corners of the room dissolved into an obsidian void. As a boy of 9, Tom knew every creak and groan of the old house, how the pipes rattled when the fridge cycled, how the branch outside his window scraped against the glass in the wind. But lately, he sensed something more, a presence that slithered just beyond the circle of light. Something patient, something that watched. His grandmother had whispered long ago tales of the Duskwalker, a spirit that crept through cracks in walls and slipped beneath doors, feasting on fear. Tom had laughed it off until the whisper started. Soft, sibilant breaths behind his ear, impossible to place, yet undeniable. He pinned his gaze on the cracked mirror above his dresser, searching for movement in its fractured reflection, but found only his own wide-eyed face staring back. Tonight, like every night, he clutched his stuffed rabbit buttons and imagined the fabric would keep him safe. The moonlight trembled across his walls. He held his breath. Listen. The first hint came as a tap, tap, tap at the door. Light footsteps, too soft to be his father's, too deliberate to be the wind. Tom froze. His pulse hummed in his ears. He dared not scream. The steps retreated, then circled around to the foot of his bed. From beneath the blankets, Tom peered into the gloom. Shadows pooled there as black as an oil slick. In the moon's faint glow, he made out a sinewy shape. Crouched, the thing had no face, only a slick, formless head that tilted in a mocking curiosity. Its shoulders hunched, and its long fingers scraped the edge of his quilt. Tom dared a whisper. "Who's there?" No answer, only a scraping hiss. He bolted upright, pressing his back against the headboard. He yanked the quilt higher, buttons clutched to his chest. The nightlight sputtered, its glow flickering once, twice, then steadied. A heartbeat of false security. Tom's eyes darted to the mirror. The cracked pane now held a second silhouette behind his own. In a rush of childish bravery, he swung his legs over the bedside and snatched a paperback from the floor. He hurled it at the mirror. The book struck the glass, sending a spiderweb of fractures across the reflection. For a heartbeat, he expected the thing to vanish, but instead, it leaned forward, palms flattening against the inside of the mirror, as if pressing outward. A low, rattling whisper filled the air. Let me close. The distance. Tom's breath froze. The thing spoke in his grandmother's voice, warped into something vile. He shrieked, scrambling for the door, but his legs tangled in the quilt. The phantom reached one long hand through the broken glass. Fingers flexing in hunger. Tom lunged forward, ripping free, and tumbled into the hallway. His sneakers slapped the wood as he fled toward his parents' room. Outside, the hall was impossibly longer than he remembered. Each step stretched into an echo. The door at the end, his parents' room, trembled, light spilling beneath it like a promise. He pounded his fist. His mother stirred, then yanked the door open. Warm lamplight poured out, banishing the blackness. Tom, what's wrong? She cried, pulling him inside. His father flicked on the main light, scanning the empty hallway. There's nothing here, buddy. Tom shook, gasping. It was in my room, a thing. His mother hugged him tight. Just a bad dream. But Tom knew. That night, Tom resolved to end it. He crept back to his room with a flashlight, buttons asleep in his jacket pocket. The door closed behind him with a soft click. He clicked on the beam, a narrow spear of white, cutting through the murk. He trained it on the cracked mirror. The moonlight glanced off the splintered glass, revealing the faintest movement across the room. The flashlight trembled in Tom's hand, and the beam danced to the corner behind his dresser. There, the shape crouched once more, watching. In the beam's glare, it had form. A hunched figure, rib-like shadows beneath translucent skin, eyes glowing dull ember red. Tom swallowed his fear. He backed toward the mirror, raising buttons above his head like a talisman. "I'm not afraid of you," he shouted. The creature's head snapped toward him. It hissed, a sound like metal scraped across bone. With a lunge, it burst from the corner, faster than thought. Tom stumbled back, crashing into his dresser. Mirrors shattered, drawers flew open. In the chaos, Tom raised buttons and slammed him down onto the creature's hand. The stuffed rabbit split open, white cotton fluff spiraling into the air. The thing recoiled, shrieking, a sound that tore at Tom's nerves. He hurled buttons again, striking its face. The creature staggered, then dissolved into writhing shadows that sank into the cracks in the floorboards. Silence. Tom sank to his knees, heart racing, breath ragged. The shards of glass glinted underfoot. He gathered the largest piece of mirror. It felt impossibly heavy in his trembling hands. When dawn filtered through his window, Tom awoke sprawled on the floor, glass fragment clutched to his chest. His parents stood over him, worry etched on their faces. "You screamed for hours," his mother murmured, brushing hair from his brow. "Just a nightmare, Tom." Tom offered a small, shaky smile. He held up the mirror shot. In its reflection, he saw not the creature, but his own pale, wide-eyed face. Yet at the edge of his vision, a slender handprint lingered on the glass, too high for his own fingers. As he rose, Tom tucked the shard into his bedside drawer. The nightlight blinked off at sunrise, and he felt its absence keenly, as though a promise had been broken. He clasped buttons tight. Somewhere, just beyond the walls of his room, the shadow that waits stirred once more, biding its time. And Tom, with every beat of his racing heart, vowed he would never turn out the light again. The Midnight Fair. The neon of Sunset Boulevard flickered like a fever dream through Dimitri's windshield as he glided down the empty stretch of asphalt. He flexed his hands around the steering wheel, feeling the familiar roughness of leather beneath his fingers, comforting proof that he had built this life from scratch, far from Moscow's rigid winters. In Los Angeles, the air tasted of gasoline, street tacos, and the promise of anonymity. Still, every creak in the taxi's suspension, every stray footstep echoing off the pavement, reminded him how fragile a newcomer's safety could be. Dmitri pressed a button to open the meter, spotted his reflection in the rearview mirror, dark circles under eyes that had known too many late nights, a face simultaneously hardened by struggle and soft with hope. He adjusted the mirror, scanning the empty back seat for ghosts. The city slumbered, but every night held its secrets. He inhaled deeply, the scent of stale coffee lingering on his breath, and whispered to himself in Russian, "Be ready." When the ride request pinged at 2:13 a.m., Dimitri's heart gave a small thump. The pickup was 2 miles north, near a rundown motel notorious for transient guests. Through the rearview mirror, he watched a solitary figure emerge from beneath the yellow glow of a flickering lamp. The man was tall, his shoulders broad under a black leather jacket zipped halfway, revealing a threadbare hoodie stained with something Dmitri dared not name. His hands were shoved deep in his pockets. When he climbed in, the cab fell silent, save for the soft click of the door. Dmitri forced a casual, "Good evening. Where to?" The passenger's voice came low with a slight drawl. "Out. By Pacific Coast Highway. Somewhere quiet." He supplied no address, just directions. Left at the overpass, straight past the cliffs, and onto a narrow side road, lined with cypress trees. As Dmitri merged onto the freeway, he flicked on the radio. A late-night news bulletin crackled through static. Police have discovered 2 more bodies near the coastline. No leads yet on the so-called lighthouse killer. The passenger's shoulders stiffened. Dimitri's pulse quickened. The man pulled out an old smartphone, thumbs tapping a message so rapidly the screen glowed against his palm. Dmitri caught fragmented words in plain sight. "Midnight. Ready by morning." The hairs on Dimitri's neck prickled. He reminded himself to keep calm. He wasn't safe if he panicked. Not with this stranger in the back. He switched off the radio and feigned fumbling with the controls. "So, PCH at dawn. Nice view." His tone was light, but every muscle coiled tight. The stranger's silence weighed on him like cold steel. On the horizon, the city's glittering sprawl gave way to coastal darkness. Waves crashed faintly, an echo of distant thunder. The passenger leaned forward, voice barely more than a rasp. "How long you've been driving?" friend. 2 years, Dmitri said, gripping the wheel. Moscow-born, learned the streets here. The man considered him a moment, then nodded slowly. Streets can be hungry. A tremor ran through Dmitri's sleeve. He glanced at the rearview mirror again. In the dim light, he thought he saw a smudge of rust, blood, on the passenger's cuff. His breath caught. He forced himself to smile. Hungry, yeah. The side road dipped into a grove of cypress. Shadows danced like specters across the asphalt. Dmitri slowed. The air grew colder. The engine's hum seemed alien in the hush. The passenger tapped his knee, the leather creaking. Stop here. He indicated a dirt drive veering away from the main road. No street lamp, just moonlight and silent trees. Dmitri's mind raced. If he refused, the man could grow suspicious. If he drove on, Dmitri risked being complicit. He swallowed. You sure? The man met his eyes in the mirror. Beneath the hood, his stare was patient, like a predator sizing up prey. He smiled thinly. I'd like to stretch my legs. Dmitri nodded, forced the taxi into the dirt. The tire sunk slightly with a hiss. The engine cut as Dmitri shut it off. He kept his foot poised above the brake, ready to bolt. The passenger unzipped his jacket, revealing gleaming metal at his waistband. A hunting knife with a curved blade, wickedly sharp. Dmitri's chest tightened. His pulse thundered in his ears. Every instinct screamed to flee. Yet, if he leapt out now... In the rearview mirror, the man slid the blade free, thumbing it gently, as if reveling in its cold weight. He turned to Dmitri. You ever wonder why they call me the lighthouse killer? Dmitri swallowed, voice quavering. No. Lonely place, the man murmured, raising the knife so the moonlight traced a silver arc on its edge. Perfect for endings. Dmitri's mind raced back to early mornings at the cab depot. How he dreamt of safety, of building a new life. He couldn't let it end here in a muddy clearing beneath ghost trees. He forced a shaky laugh. Knife's a bit dramatic for a stroll. The killer's head tilted, amused. I prefer drama. He placed the knife handle on the seat, blade pointed at Dmitri. Drive me home. Dmitri's fingers trembled as he turned the key. The engine roared to life. He pressed the brake, then the gas, inching forward. Each inch felt like carrying a death sentence. The passenger slid onto the front seat without a word. The knife lay between them, shining like a promise. In the beam of the taxi's headlights, Dmitri saw the cypress trunks recede, and for the first time in months he prayed. He punched his phone open, thumb hovering over 911. He had 45 seconds before the call connected, 45 seconds to stall. He tapped the gas, merging back onto Pacific Coast Highway with a burst of speed. The killer leaned back, cross-armed, studying him with satisfaction. Dmitri forced a steady tone. Bad night for a walk, huh? The killer smiled, lips curling. The night chose me. At last, the glow of distant streetlights appeared, the outskirts of a coastal town. A small police cruiser idled by the roadside. Dmitri exhaled so hard he coughed. He let his thumb slide off 911. No call made. Instead, he drove past the cruiser, heart racing, until the quayside motels came into view. The killer tapped the knife against the window quietly. Here. Dmitri stopped. The man slipped out, grabbed the blade, and turned. Thanks for the ride, Dmitri. His voice was soft, almost tender. Then he vanished into the fog that rolled in from the ocean. Dmitri sat alone in the idling taxi, rain-slicked streets shining under a sallow street lamp. The knife lay abandoned on the passenger seat, its blade smeared with something dark. He stared at the steel edge and felt the marrow chill. He did not dare touch it. When dawn broke, he slipped away from the key without telling anyone. Back at his apartment, he locked every door, double-checked every window. He still dreamed of the man's smile and the gleam of that knife. Dmitri replayed every moment in his mind, searching for clues he'd missed. He found them. The stains, the words on the screen, the silent pleasure in the passenger's eyes. He understood now. He had driven not just a passenger, but a monster. And as the sun rose over Los Angeles, Dmitri knew one truth. Some fares are more than just a trip. Some are nightmares you survive by a hair's breadth. And that midnight ride would haunt him forever.